which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to take my mask off while I'm talking, because otherwise you won't be able to hear me. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's very important that you hear what we have to say. We're trying to keep this to where it is as transparent as possible. And we would love our residents to know exactly what we are doing and what we're thinking about. So with that, why we're here today. Technically, we're here to discuss the creation of Homer Glen's first public works department, and it involves the transfer of responsibilities with the maintenance of our roads from the Township Road District to the village. So it's going to be pretty dry stuff. But this issue is of great importance, not only to our residents of Homer Glen, but all of Homer Township. It's really about controlling our own destiny as a village. It's about accountability to our residents and to the taxpayers of Homer Township. It's about making decisions for ourselves and not being beholden to another layer of government bureaucracy. We will try tonight to put it in simple terms. Other municipalities in Homer Township, including Lockport, Glen, and Lamont, each have their own public works departments. Even though they are much smaller than Homer Glen, in fact, Homer Glen is the largest municipality in Illinois that is dependent on Township to maintain their streets. Why is that? Well, when Homer Glen incorporated in 2001, which makes it one of the newer municipalities in the state, we didn't have the money to establish a public works department from the ground up. The equipment, plow trucks, and staff, workers would have been had to hire, and the property required to store the trucks and equipment all cost money, a lot of money. So the village decided to continue its partnership with the Township Road District under an intergovernmental agreement. The relationship has worked out well, but as Carrie will walk you through, the village has grown significantly throughout the years, and we are now ready to take the next step. Like every other municipality in Illinois, and operate independently of other government entities. Of the roads in Homer Township Road District maintains, just 18 miles out of the 153 are located outside of Homer Glen. It just doesn't make sense. We are proposing a transfer to stewardship between the village and the Township Road District. Homer Glen residents have paid for the road district's assets and equipment and have been paying the staff for the past 2 decades, and we own the majority of the streets that the road district maintains. So why bother? If it isn't broke, why fix it? Well, if we don't, we will remain beholden to the township and the whims of an outside government board who would have the ability to tell us what roads to maintain, what roads to fix, what roads to plow. They have the authority to nullify a current intergovernmental agreement and withhold funding for 1 year's time, leaving us to create a public works department from scratch, which would cost taxpayers millions of dollars. Furthermore, this transfer will create a system that's more fair to all residents. Currently, Lockport, Glen, and Lamont taxpayers all pay the township and district to maintain the roads, even though our local municipalities do the work. They would no longer have to pay the stubble tax, and we would ensure that those 18 miles of unincorporated streets are maintained. Records matter. If you can judge us by ours, we run the village responsibly. We operate efficiently and keep services streamlined with fewer resources and staff. Compared to other towns, and while we've grown quickly, we have no debt, we are accountable to you, and it shows. The transfer will benefit our residents because we will establish accountability. We are no longer beholden and indebted to the township, and the transfer will actually lower the cost to our taxpayers in the long run. Our goal is tonight, and during the process, is to demonstrate transparency. We will provide you with all the facts and answer all your questions. At any time, the public is welcome to reach out to us with questions or concerns, and we welcome you to visit our website to learn more. And with that, we'll turn this over to Ms. Carrie Fryer.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I am Carrie Freiling, and I'm the village manager for the village of Homer Glen. So we do have a prepared presentation for you guys tonight that we're going to briefly walk through, and then after we get done with that, if you guys have any questions and you're writing them down in the note cards that have been provided, please turn them in to staff here. And then if you want to have a public comment and you want to come up to the podium after we're done, then you'll have the opportunity to speak as well. So again, welcome. So this is kind of the outline for the evening tonight. These are the key milestones and the overview that we're going to share with everyone who's here tonight, as well as those who are on the Zoom call as well. This is also being recorded tonight and it will be put up on our website, as well as will be put on our channel 6 as well, as for anyone who wasn't able to attend or listen tonight. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? Good. All right. So the first few moments of the presentation, we want to give a quick overview of Homer Glen's proud history. Although it's been short, it's been very eventful. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we are a community that's about 20 years old. Actually, next year we'll be celebrating our 20th birthday party. And so it was very important that we thought for everyone who's going to be listening and coming to this meeting tonight, or the one that we're going to be holding next week, which will be similar, is to remind everyone how we got to where we are today. And so the next few slides that we have before you tonight is kind of a summary of the life cycle of a growing community that's actually very young compared to other communities in the state of Illinois. In 2001 was when the village incorporated. In 2002 is when we entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the road commissioner of the Homer Township to take care of our roads. The next critical milestone on this slide is basically, I would say, 2012. When the village basically was the voters approved the home rule status for the village of Homer Glen. And so as you can see in these slides as we go through it, it really talks about the evolution, the life cycle of the village, which most people don't get to see because most villages in the state are like 100 years old, but we're only 20 years old. So we're unique to other communities within the state. As you go on, you can kind of see again the evolution. Now we're not in the infant stages anymore, but now we're growing into our toddler years, or our teen years. And a big milestone for that was when we actually ended up purchasing the piece of property that we're all sitting in tonight, which is the purchase of the golf course and turning that into our village hall. And so you can see here that those are some critical milestones as well that the village went through as they continue to grow. Obviously, in 2018, 2019, as we get closer to where we sit today, we have the opening of the Heritage Park below us, which used to be the former golf course. And then we actually, last year, was a very busy year for the board, because we really did a lot of things, and you can see in this next slide, last year was the first year that we had Homer Fest. It used to be under the Homer Township, and it moved to the new facility here as well. Last year was the first year that the village extended our water and sewer main, and now we're in the business of providing utility for the future and growth. And then obviously last year was a big deal financially for us, because we are debt-free now. The village has no debt, we owe nothing. So again, it starts to show the life cycle and how responsible the board and the village has been with your taxpayer dollars. So we sit here today, and tonight we're here because we're talking about the transfer of the stewardship of the roads that are owned by the residents of the village of Homer Glen. So before we get further into the presentation, this is just a reminder, and maybe some of you are aware how units of local government work, and some of you aren't. So something to keep in mind as we go through tonight is that every single governmental stakeholder that we're going to be talking about tonight is its own separate entity. We are separate. The Township Road District is separate. The Homer Township is separate. The City of Lockport is separate. We are all separate governmental entities. Some of us have more authority than others, such as the City of Lockport or the village, because we're home rule, and we have the ability to assess sales tax, motor fuel taxes, and things that township government is not allowed to do by state statute. But just remember that as we go through, because that's going to be an important thing to remember. So what is our relationship with the Homer Township Road District today? As we mentioned previously, in 2002 was when we first entered into that IGA for them to take care of our roads. These are the primary terms of our agreement that still stands today. And if you look through this slide, you're going to see that it's very one-sided. And basically what it does, it takes the roads that are owned by the village of Homer Glen, and it cedes control of those as it relates to snow plowing, maintenance, capital improvements, drainage, tree trimming, whatever that falls within that IGA, is handed to this gentleman, the road commissioner sitting next to me. He has 100% control of how those are retained, how they are funded, and what levy is set by that. In addition to that, the Homer Township also has approval of the levy in the board as well. Again, we own the roads, residents own the roads, but we have no say as it sits today and how those roads are taken care of, currently or into the future. Which is one of the reasons we're here today, to control our own destiny. So what are the additional duties of the Homer Township Road District? In addition to taking care of all our roads that we own, they take care of all the unincorporated miles of Homer Township, which totals 18 total miles. They help us with our Homerfest planning. They have a voting seat on the village's Public Services and Safety Committee, and they're a liaison to the Homer Township Board of Trustees. What does Homer Township Road District not do? They don't take care of any of the roads in the city of Lockport. They don't take care of any of the roads in New Lenox or in Lamont that are also in the Homer Township, okay? So this is the boundary of the Homer Township as it sits today. The purple or the light pink is all Homer Glen. The orange color is the city of Lockport. The blue down at the bottom is New Lenox, and the, I guess you call it like the beige color, is unincorporated Homer Township. Of this, 61% of all the properties in the township are located in the village of Homer Glen. So what about the miles? So we're going now from the geographic boundaries of the Homer Township down to the miles. So there are 233 total miles within the Homer Township, and this breaks down who owns what miles. So you can see from this chart that 135 of those miles are owned by the village of Homer Glen and its residents. The next biggest one is the city of Lockport. There's 47 miles that are owned by them, and then the next third one is the ones that are owned by either Will County or IDOT. You can see that the Homer Township, which is the gray pie, is 8% of the total ownership of all miles within the Homer Township. So then what about the roads that the road commissioner actually takes care of as part of our IGA or part of his responsibilities for the unincorporated miles of the village, of the township? So of those, 135 of them again are owned by the village, and 18 of them are owned by the Homer Township. So that means that of his annual budget and his work plan that he does with the road district, 88% of those are for the benefit of the village of Homer Glen, and 12% are for the unincorporated township miles. So again, the village of Homer Glen is the largest investor and owner of the road district as we sit today. And yet, we have no direct legal authority or input on how our roads are taken care of or paid for, or any capital improvement plans moving forward. So now let's talk about property taxes a little bit. So this is a chart of the taxes that are levied by the road commissioner. And this is the 2019 levy that are paid, you pay in 2020 on your property tax bills. So this is a breakdown. If you were to look at your property tax bill that you have at home, you will see there are two line items on that property tax bill that are taxed by the road district. One is the road and bridge tax, which is the top spreadsheet. And the second one is equipment and building. These are the actual dollars that are levied from the real estate tax bills for the last levy that was set. And you can see the breakdown again by regional participation in the tax levy of those funds that are basically set by Commissioner DeVivo. And again, you can see on this that 63% of that tax levy is made up of the village of Homer Glen property owners. And then the next highest one again is the city of Lockport, which is 29%. So, and then again, you can see that the Homer Township is only 7%. They only contribute 7% of the revenue of the tax levy back to the road district. This is important to remember because we're going to come back to the slide in a second. So what about the actual operational funding of the road district? And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So when Mr. DeVivo goes and he sets his tax levy, and I'm going to go back to this slide, you can see that I'm going to use Lockport as an example. There's $1,245,988. When that is paid, half of that goes back to the local municipality. So half of that goes to the city of Lockport, and they get to keep that and use it for their operations. And half of it goes to Mike DeVivo for the operations of the road district. It's not split for equipment and building though. So when you get to this slide here that talks about the annual funding of the operations of the township, you can see the numbers change because we give everything back to the road district. We give our half back to the road district, then he keeps the other half, and then we'll get to another side. We also supplement with some motor fuel tax as well. So when you talk about the annual operations of his budget and where the money's coming from to take care of the road program for the road district, you can see our number goes up to 73%. And Lockport's number goes down to 19, and then the unincorporated Homer Township goes down to 8. And that's because those other communities are getting that other half. That we're giving our full share to the road district to provide funding for our roads. So in addition, we give $183,000 annually in motor fuel tax to the road district as well. And through 2019, that has totaled about $3.1 million. So that's on top of the property tax levy. So it's important to note also that even though half of that levy is going back to the city of Lockport and the village of New Lenox that's collected, Commissioner DeVivo has shared some of those funds over the years back to the city of Lockport. And this is the breakdown of those totals. Some of it has been through paving programs, and some of it has been direct funding to the city of Lockport. But all since 2008, the total that has been shared back to the city of Lockport is $713,000. So what does this all mean? Just to recap, it means that the Village of Homer Glen residents are the primary investor and owner of the road district, representing 63%. While the other communities, in particular the city of Lockport, have also been paying into the road district. They are a smaller investor than the Homer Glen. And the road district does not retain their roads though, and that's not fair. So even though Lockport and Lennox gets to keep 50% of the road and bridge tax that comes in every single year, the other 50% has been going to the Homer Township Road District. And that is something that is unfair in the current system and needs to be fixed. The unincorporated Homer Township only counts for 18 miles of the roads and is only a 7% investor in the road district. But yet, the Homer Township Board gets to control approval of the budget, adoption of the levy, and the Homer Township Road District gets to make every single decision as it relates to our roads. So why are we here tonight? Why is this needed? We're here tonight because our residents in our village are exposed to risk and they're vulnerable because of the existing IGA that we have with the road district can be terminated by either party with only 1 year's notice. If that were to happen, our taxpayers, our residents of the village, would then have to spend considerably more money to create a public works department from the ground up, even though everyone has already paid for the road district already. So what's the solution? On September 23rd, the village board adopted a resolution to begin the process to do the transfer of stewardship, including all the real estate and all the equipment and the assets that currently are being held in the ownership of the road district to the village of Homer Glen. So how does this work? How do we legally do this transfer and meet state statute and all the laws that are on the books? I'm going to turn that over, because I'm not an attorney, to Eric Hansen, who is our village attorney. Eric?
Thanks, Gary. One of the things when I talk about property, when I'm talking about that, I want everybody to know I'm referring to the real estate and the buildings, but also, I'm also referring to the property, the personal property, such as the equipment, the tools, and et cetera. And I think all of us here can agree that the property belongs to the residents, it belongs to the public. I think that's important to note. But legally, all of this property is owned by and is controlled by legally the road district. Not the village, not the township board, but the road district. And there are several legal mechanisms set out in the statutes and the case law that authorize the sale and transfer of this property between the road district to the Village of Homer Glen. One is the Illinois Highway Code. And I'm not gonna read the things on the slide. I think you guys can do that yourselves, but I'm just gonna kind of touch on these. You've got the Illinois Highway Code, that throughout the code, there are various provisions that address the transfer of equipment as well as real estate. Also, there's the Illinois Local Government Property Transfer Act. I know that's a mouthful, but despite the mouthful that it's called, it is actually a streamlined and very simplified method to transfer real estate between public bodies. So for example, the road district and the village would both benefit from this transfer act. And this allows for the property of the transfer of real estate property. Now, I've heard that there are claims out there that the road district doesn't have the authority, doesn't have the ability to do this. Again, this is based on Illinois statutes, the case law that we've researched, we've looked through all this. And I disagree that the road district doesn't have that authority. We wouldn't be here if we decided that this isn't something that's doable. I think a lot of the claims that I've heard in the past talk about that the road district, in terms of the limitations, are when the road district is trying to sell or transfer property to a private individual, not another public body. That's what we have right here. We will find out going forward, apparently, that the statutes and the case law do authorize it, because I believe last night the Township Board voted to authorize the filing of litigation and a lawsuit against the village and the road district to prevent the transfer of stewardship that we're talking about here tonight. So with that, obviously there's going to be questions later, but I'll just turn it back over to Carrie at this point.
Okay, so the next question is, what about the residents who live in Homer Township who don't live in Homer Glen? What happens to them and the investment they've made in the road district today? So, as previously indicated on the slide, the City of Lockport residents are the second largest investor and owner of the road district, without a doubt. They deserve to be fairly and reasonably compensated for their prior investment. And we're in the process of having appraisals done right now on what the value of the asset is. That includes the equipment, that includes the real estate, including all the buildings and the land. Once we have that, we will be sitting down with the representatives from the various communities, not just Lockport, but also New Lenox as well as Lamont. And we will share that information with them so they can see, we'll be completely transparent to see what the value of the asset will be. We've already begun the dialogue with our fellow communities, neighboring communities, and we're going to continue to have those dialogues and negotiate a fair resolution that can be reached by all parties. We don't have those appraisers yet, but we should have them within the next month. What about the residents of unincorporated Homer Township, those 18 miles of road that we talked about previously? What happens to those? Well, again, out of fairness, we recognize that they do, although they have a very small ownership stake, they still have an ownership stake. So what the village board has put on the table as an offer to the Homer Township has been that the village will continue to take care of those 18 miles for free as part of a new IGA that would have to be negotiated. The village board, I want to speak on their behalf, you'll hear from them tonight, each individually, believes that is more than a fair offer, as they will still have the roads maintained without having to pay for it on their property taxes. Again, we're trying to make sure that there's no one that's left on, there's no issues left unresolved, and we're trying to be fair. The Homer Township Board will have to make that decision themselves. We can't tell them what to do, whether they will decide to accept that offer of free maintenance or not. The goal is, though, is when we're done with this transfer, that no residents of Homer Township will be paying property taxes to the Homer Township Road District again. That's the goal. So how will the new Public Works Department be funded? Well, in order for us to fund it, we will have to do our own road and bridge tax. Right now, there is not a road and bridge tax on your tax bill because Mr. DeVivo is taxing that on our behalf. So we will have to initiate a new road and bridge tax. The Homer Township Road District line items that we mentioned earlier will disappear from the property tax bill. This is in the ideal situation. The Village of Homer Glen will continue to fund a portion with our MFT funds as well. And what's important to know on this slide is there are certain state statutes that are required, and every governmental unit must set their levy by the end of this year for the following year. So these decisions have to be made by the village board by mid-December of this year, so they can submit their levy, and that's a state statute requirement, so that can be then put on their property tax for the next coming year. Our goal is to have the whole transfer completed by spring of 2021, which is next year. So it's important to note here that the issue of how we fund the new Public Works Department has nothing to do with the ballot referendum that's been proposed by the Homer Township Board, and it has nothing to do with any dispute that we may have now or into the future with the Homer Township Board. The bottom line is this: if we're going to have our own Public Works Department, we have to have a funding source. And it can't be the road district anymore. So that's why it's important that everyone understands what this means to you. So how will this affect my taxes? I'm sure you're all wondering this. So I'm going to walk you through. So what we have up here is an example of what a typical tax bill looks like. And this is for the 2019 tax rate. Currently, the road district levies 3.3191, that's their tax rate. And what that is made up of these two baby blue line items. These are both Mr. DeVivo's line items that he taxes. If you add these two numbers together, they equal the 0.3191, okay? So this scenario is for a $250,000 market value home in Homer Glen. So what happens then, so these line items on these columns over here you can see, they change. So this will be for next year. These line items become zeros, and what you see is this new added line item that's in green here that says Village of Homer Glen Public Works. And basically this dollar amount you see here, which is the 0.5037, would be the amount of, would be the rate that the village board would have to set in order to levy the same amount of money that Mr. DeVivo has levied this previous year for the road district. So the question becomes is, why is there a difference between the two? The reason there's a difference between the two is because when before we were spreading that entire levy across Lockport, New Lenox, and Lamont, now it's just going to be spread on the Village of Homer Glen. And that is why the rate goes up. So you can see that in this particular example, no decision has been made yet on what the rate would be, but this is an example. To raise the same amount of money that Mike had for this year's budget, we would have to basically increase the rate, and that would net out of approximately $142 increase in property taxes for a Village of Homer Glen home. That's basically $250,000. Again, being completely transparent on why and how this works. So again, basically the average is for every $100,000 of value of your home, the taxes would go up $57. And this gives you the breakdown between a $250,000 all the way to a $550,000 value. One of the other things that you need to remember is because we are a village and we are a home rule village, we have certain revenue sources that are available to us that township government does not have. We have the ability to collect sales tax. We have the ability to collect motor fuel tax. We get per capita distributions every month from the state of Illinois based on our census information. And we also have received in the last year from the state of Illinois through their Rebuild Illinois bonds about $1.6 million of a one-time allocation that's sitting in our savings account right now, for lack of a better explanation. So the reason why we included this slide tonight is to show you that we don't have to necessarily fund the Public Works Department 100% with property taxes, like the Homer Township does, like the road district would have to do. Because we have the ability, we have the resources for these other different types of funding mechanisms that can also go into consideration of planning. So it provides more flexibility for the village. So the other thing that's important to understand, that growth is important to the local community. And so we included this because I wanted you all to see what our EAV, Equalized Assessed Valuation, is basically the value of all property within the village. And you can look on here and you can see in 2001, when the village incorporated, our value of property, that's the taxable value of property, was about 550 million total in 2001. Today, in 2019, you can see that that value has gone up to almost 1 billion in terms of value. So that's almost, that's over a $400 million increase. And why is this important? Because as development occurs and as growth occurs in a community, that land gets reassessed from a vacant land, which is much lower, gets reassessed to a higher value. And that then gets spread across all of the people who pay into the levy, which then means the burden of the taxes go down. So what we did is we just listed a few projects that we know right now are in the works, have been approved, or are under construction that currently are not being fully assessed. They're just being assessed as vacant land, some of it farmland, that now will be assessed in the coming year that will actually increase that EAV that we have. So more than likely next year, we're going to go over 1 billion in EAV for the entire village of Homer Glen. That's important because as growth continues to happen, the ability, the rate will go down because you have more property. So what is the value of the road district? We're not sure yet. We're hopefully we'll know within the next 30 days. So right now we have appraisals being finalized for the equipment. We're having appraisals being finalized for the real estate. We do anticipate, based on where we're at right now, that the real estate value is somewhere around $7 million for everything. That's for the real estate, the buildings, the equipment, snow plows, all that. We'll have the real number here in, like I said, in a few weeks. But what's important to understand is that if you had to build a new public works department from the ground up, we had to go out and buy land. We had to build a building. We had to build a salt building. We have to buy new snow plows. How much does this new snow plow cost these days, Mike?
About $200,000.
$200,000 for one snow plow. When the residents of Homer Glen have already paid for it for the last 20 years, and they're sitting right down the street. So that's why we know that this is the best value for our residents. Because if we had to build this from the ground up, and you worried about your property taxes going up, we would have no choice, but it'd be much more than $7 million. Now again, and the reason we highlighted the residents, our residents have already paid for this. You own it. So what are the next steps? This is step number 1. We have a lot more steps to do. We have additional public informational meetings. We need to complete the appraisers. We need to continue to work with our fellow neighboring communities, the Homer Township, the road district. There's a lot of steps that still have to be done. And so we're just beginning, and that's why we invited everyone to come out to listen to what our plans are and the reason why we're going down this path. Last but not least, what about the township referendum? It's important to understand the township referendum that is on the ballot, some of you may have already voted, was not proposed by the village of Homer Glen, nor was it proposed by the Homer Township Road District. It was unilaterally put on the ballot by the Homer Township Board. We had no input or we had no say in that thing. So what happens if the township referendum is approved? These are facts. If the township referendum was approved, it will give 100% control of the entire road program and road district to the township board. And they will assume the responsibilities in our existing IGA. If the referendum is approved, that means that they are more than likely that every taxing property will continue to pay taxes throughout the entire Homer Township. New Lenox, Lockport, Homer Glen, and Lamont. Because they're going to, in order for them to tax, they have to tax their entire township. They can't just tax one community or one piece of property. It has to be across the entire township. If the referendum is defeated, the village is going to continue to work on the transfer of the stewardship and create its own public works department with the road district's existing assets. And we will continue to work with the taxpayers of Lockport, New Lenox, and Lamont to make sure that, one, they no longer pay taxes into it, but they are also fairly compensated for their vested ownership interest into the existing road district. So that's all I got. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mary Ukich.
know if any of the trustees would like to add anything to this. Microphone. Okay. We would like to know if the trustees want to come forward and say what they're thinking. So we'll start off with trustee Glen.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a few comments. I made comments several weeks ago. I left the dais and went to the podium and made those comments as a resident, and tonight I will speak as a trustee. After seeing this presentation laid out, I think it's still going to be very confusing. It's confusing to a lot of people who understand this, so, if anybody doesn't get all the relationships or how the numbers add up, please reach out to staff, to the mayor, to any of the trustees to get clarification on it, because it can be very confusing. Sometimes you lose track of who all the people are and what does stewardship really mean, what does ownership mean, and how are we fairly compensating people. So please, again, I encourage everybody to reach out. But we kind of keep getting lost too in the stewardship and the ownership and who owns what and all of that. And just just a quick breakdown to kind of go on what Carrie had said at the end there. The accountability, the authority, the intergovernmental agreement that we have right now with the road district has been in place since 2003, and it basically keeps renewing every year. There have been, the Township Board has alluded to the fact that maybe it should have been changed a long time ago, and maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't have. We are trying to fix that right now in order to bring fairness to this entire situation, and get some of these taxpayers who aren't getting service but are paying into it to get them out of that, as well as make sure that we cover all the residents of the village of Illinois, or of the village of former Glen, and get them the services that they need. That, like Carrie said, will cost us a little bit more, but that really is, it's what we should fairly be paying for these services. While there will be an increase right now, it's a one-time increase in order to get parity on what a public works actually does cost. This is not something that will continue to increase every year as we go forward. So the numbers that she used, she has a number of $57 for $100,000 worth of market value of your house. So if you had a $300,000 house, you're going to be roughly a $170 increase. That's a one-time increase. That's not every year after year after year. The only way we increase years going forward is if we increase the levy amount, or if our EAV were to decrease for some odd reason, we ended up having to, that's the way those numbers change. But right now, what this does is this gets us to a kind of a parity with our neighboring and peer communities. But one of the things that, to me, one of the bigger things of this whole thing is that the intergovernmental agreement that we continue to renew every year, year after year, it says that all of the authority for the maintenance of our roads, the whole program of our roads, which roads get repaved every year. Every year we do a program where we repave several miles of road, as well as resurface some. All of that authority rests with the road district commissioner right now. And that's something that has served us really well for the last 17 years. I did not know Mr. Dunn. He was the original highway commissioner when that IGA was structured. I did not know him, but I have known Commissioner DeVivo for many years, and we've been getting great service. And he's an honorable man who's been trying to do the honorable thing for many years. He takes in his money. He knew that the system was basically unfair, and he's tried to make it work as best as he could with the other communities. Not everything is forever. Mr. DeVivo has decided to not run again. We don't know what the future brings, either through an election of bringing in a new commissioner, or if this referendum were to go through and this authority then goes back to the Township Board. Those decisions would now be being made by people that we don't necessarily know what their best interest would be. How does that look to the resident? I mean, I'm a resident too. We're all residents. We live here. It starts snowing at 2 o'clock in the morning. Mr. DeVivo, Commissioner DeVivo, makes that call. He sets his alarm. He wakes up. He calls his guys out. He gets that service done. He takes care of that. So by 7 o'clock, we're on the road and clear roads. Would somebody else, would just a vendor, because that's basically what the Homer Township Board is going to be to us, is just a vendor. They wouldn't necessarily have that ownership stake like we do. Would they have that kind of commitment to our residents, or would they say, you know what, I'm not gonna risk the overtime for those guys. Let's call them out at 8 o'clock. We can take care of it then. Another thing is that the, sorry, I lost my notes. There are storms, windstorms, hailstorms, things of that nature. They blow through town all the time. They knock down trees into the roadways, into the right-of-ways. Sometimes they're hanging out, there are lights out. Again, the road district has gone to great lengths to help us to take care of this. It's because we really don't have, other than our EMA, we don't really have anybody to call out. These are things that are well beyond the scope of the intergovernmental agreement that we have with them. So we are getting all of these services. We're basically getting a quasi-public works department out of what is considered a road district. And, we talked about the unfairness to certain taxpayers, but it really is unfair sometimes to think of a road district or a highway department as a public works department. A public works department is going to help us take care of that sewer and water line we just put down 159th Street. We invested millions of dollars into that in our infrastructure for our residents, and our public works department that is taken care of by this building, by this administration, that would fall to them. It would also include our parks and our trails. We'll be able to better service those. We'll have more equipment being utilized more often on those. It includes tree services and helping with our creeks. We've all, the Public Services Committee right now is working on a creek program. It can help out with all of those things. So, Mayor, when you started out your remarks, you said you've heard from some people saying, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And, my answer to that is, it is in fact broken. I mean, we just don't even realize that it is broken, but it's broken in the fact that it is still unfair, and it has been broken for some time, and it really is, it's time for these vital services to come in-house and be taken care of here. We have a professional staff in this building. The board and the mayor, we just lay out direction, and we tell staff, we have a professional staff in this building that we just tell them, this is where we want to go, and you guys get us there in the most professional, efficient manner, and that I think will be taken care of that way. So, I will rest now.
Okay. Next, we'll go to trustee Casino.
Thank you, Mayor. Mirroring what trustee Gray said. Hear me now? You guys hear me? All right, perfect. I agree with everything trustee Gray said. The only part that I'm kind of torn with is, wish we would have had a little more feedback from the residents. Kind of like maybe an advisory referendum or something like that. Because at the end of the day, we have, there's 6 trustees making a huge decision. It's a big decision to be made by us, just my opinion. But I can see where they're going with this. That's what I think.
How's that? Trustee Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think that between what Carrie talked about and Eric and Trustee Gray, I think that pretty much, I'm not going to say they stole my thunder, but they pretty much said everything that I was thinking about. So I think that it's important, when I've been talking to the residents, the one thing that they asked me, how much is this going to cost? And I think we pretty much came up with the number of $57 for $100,000 of home value. I think you can do the calculation depending on where you live and what your home is worth as to what the increase is going to be. But I think the other thing that's also important is that we're going to have our own public works, which we've never had before, and the road district taxes are going to be removed. It's going to be replaced with the public works tax. So you're getting rid of one, you're going to have another, but it's, obviously the numbers are 57 per 100,000, so you do the math on that, you can come up with it. But I think it's also important that Homer Glen, the residents are going to be in control of their own destiny with this, and that's very important, rather than the township who own 8% of the roads making all the decisions on your behalf.
Good. Trustee Caprio.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with what the other trustees are saying here. To me, it's more about put government and politics aside. This is an essential service and services that we need for this community. It is important to not hide our head in the sands every time someone says the word tax or every time someone says the word levy. we need to get these services done, so we will pay for it one way or another. The way that we're looking at going about it, I think is the most prudent, effective, and efficient way to do it. We allow others to control what we want, and it can cost us much more in the long run. We do need to control our own destiny. We can increase efficiencies, not that Commissioner DeVivo doesn't have great efficiencies in place, but if we increase efficiencies, look at the current model of how it's structured with the entire road district as we bring it on as public works, we could be saving money in the future. It is important to understand that we do have money that came from the state of Illinois, potentially could be used towards this first year to get us an opportunity to learn what we're up against. And with that said, I think that gives us an opportunity to then create those efficiencies and maybe look at the current model once we bring it in-house. Just remember, this is snow removal. It encompasses roads, bridge repairs and replacements, culvert repairs from flooding, tree services, sidewalk repairs and replacement. This is a lot of work. I work in the property management business, and your snow removal guys, just to use that as an example, is not as easy to, they're gonna go to the highest paying customer the fastest. So if we wanna be overpriced and underserviced, we can be. But I think if we take it and control our own destiny, we serve ourselves and the residents of this community much better.
Mr. Garfield.
I'll just speak to trustee Pesmino's comment as far as including the public. I think that's what we're doing here. That's what these workshops are for. That's what these Zooms are for. That's what all of the advertisement and the getting the word out is for. If anybody should have had an advisory board, it should have been a township before they put it on the referendum. I believe that we're being as transparent as we've always been. We're putting the information out there. And I get phone calls on this every day, so we're open to questions or whatever you need. And definitely look at your comments. And again, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this again. And that's why we spent so much time, involved in the community, making sure that everybody understands this referendum fully and makes an educated vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything more to add. I think everybody said it very well and covered everything I would have said.
Well, thank you. And I guess I would be the final one. When all this started, it was impossible for us to come to the residents to see what they thought. Because first I had to go to my 6 trustees to see if they even had any want to do this. When we did a consensus on it, all 6 of them said, yes, this is what we should look into. With that, the next day I went in to see Supervisor Myers to let her know what we were thinking. And there was never anything written up. There's never anything that has been guaranteed. It was a thought because, as Trustee Gray said, we don't know what's in front of us. And the last thing we want is to one day wake up and we don't have a road district. Then what do we do? Because cost-wise, as Gary had said, it's going to be through the roof. We have something that we have paid for, and we have a commissioner that has done an absolutely wonderful job with the roads, with the trees. Anything we've had a problem with, it takes one phone call and he's there. Sometimes I wonder how the hell he does it in the first place, because he does a lot of work. If it's bad enough and it happens a little bit outside our town, they pick up the stuff just so residents can get through. So this is something that this village has been very open with residents here. We do tell you what we plan on doing, but we don't want to jump ahead, put our heads over the skis before we know. When we came up with buying this place, and then from there making this our village hall, we told you what we were going to spend. We saved money. We've done everything that we've told the residents here in Homer Glen what we were going to do. And as Carrie said, we're not going to exclude the township. We want to make sure that they're covered too. After all, this is all Homer. We live in Homer Township too. So this is something that's very important. I think everyone needs to know about it. We had no problem with the referendum. It would have been nice if we would have known before it actually happened though. So if there are any questions, or Carrie, do you have anything else before we do the?
Right.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Commissioner DeVito.
Did you get all that? I guess the scariest part about all of this is, all this information that they've been giving you is, I understand and comprehend it all in half of the past 15 years. It's kind of like the best secret in Homer here, that, the best kept secret, that these taxes have been grossly unfair to the people of Lockport. When you take $600,000, $500,000 out of the community to subsidize this, that's pretty unfair. I've met with I think there's some people from Lockport, several times over the last 15 years that I've been here. I've met with Lockport residents, I've met with state senators, I've met with state representatives, I've met with tax collectors, trying to resolve this issue. That is why in one of these slides, we saw that we voluntarily contributed back to the city of Lockport over the past, I believe, 10 or 12 years, $713,000 either in direct cash payments or in services to the community. That's just albeit weak, an effort to let them know that we do understand that it's unfair, and we're trying to eliminate this unfairness in any way we can. To say this is a good idea would be short, because I've looked at this for 15 years, and I've studied it for 15 years, and I've tried to work it out for 15 years. And I can surely say that this is a good idea for all of the residents in Homer Township. That's how I feel, that's how I structured it, that's how I wanted it to work. Now, I know what you've heard about from all of the people here in Homer Glen is how it affects them. And, you know, obviously, they're beholden to the community, the 25,000 people who live, you know, within the city of Homer Glen, and rightfully so. I, on the other hand, am elected by all 40,000 residents and all the communities in Homer Township. And I'm beholden to them, all of them, those who live in Lockport, those who live in the unincorporated area, those who live in the village, and those who live in New Lenox. Now, when we get into the weeds about this, I know you often hear people say, well, what about New Lenox, and what about Lamont? New Lenox, I believe, is, the last I counted was 65 homes. I don't think I've spoken with the mayor of New Lenox. I don't think that's a game stopper in any way. And when they mention Lamont, it's one property. Some of you may be aware of the gas station that's going up right on 135th and Archer. That's it. And they've only paid taxes into the township 1 year. So I don't see Lamont being much of a problem. My goal is to get this done, resolve all the issues that we have, fairly compensate those that need to be compensated. And in the end, I really truly hope that the only question that will be asked is, why didn't you do this sooner? I truly believe it's the right thing to do for every resident in the community. Thank you.
We have the sign-in sheet. People have decided who want to comment. And does anyone have questions that are written down that they would like to have answers to tonight? Because we commit, if you give us the question, we'll give you the answer either tonight or within 24 hours on our website. So, yeah, can you give those to the mayor? No one has any questions? Come on, someone's got to have a question. All right, do you have it written down?
No, I apologize, I did not. I wasn't sure if it was going to be something before the presentation or after, and I wanted to hear the presentation before I make a comment.
Okay, you can write, you can give it to Matt.
It's a few questions. Can I get up and just?
Yeah, so we're good. We have some people who've already, did you sign in as
I want to
name?
say let everybody go and.
And then we'll come to you.
And then if possible,
Okay.
I'd just like to take
Yeah.
2 minutes and 59 seconds of your time. Thank you.
You can do that. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, the first one would be Tony Gray. Go.
I believe you left.
Okay. Lynn McGarry. is going to let us know in 15 seconds before. We just want to make sure that this.
I will take 3 minutes. Okay. The presentation was really informative, but a lot to think about. And I might have more to say at the next meeting. And what did occur to me is why fix it if it isn't broke, but it is broke. It's, you know, not me who's paying for taxes for something I'm not getting, but it's too many people. Why did we incorporate it if we're only gonna do it part way? We have to, you know, when we did incorporate, we knew it wasn't the end. We knew it was the beginning. And this is the next step. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Road vendors?
Thank you, everyone, for your great presentation today. I thought it was very informative. But I do have a couple of questions. And one of the questions that I really would like to pose to the board and is about a referendum. And basically, Ruben took my thunder, but what I wanted to know was, as a resident and as a business owner, I feel that I am going to be taxed twice, not only as a resident, but as a business owner, if we go ahead with a 1% sales tax on the business. What I'd like to know is, if we are also concerned about the residents here, why don't we put this out for a vote for a referendum in the April election? Mike, you can answer that.
The board discussed calling out for a referendum early on, and it was the wishes of the board right away. We should put this out to a referendum. Unfortunately, the board has only the power to put the referendum out in the village, and therefore it would leave out the other 15,000 residents. They don't have the power to put a referendum out in the whole township, only in the village. And they thought if they were to put it out in a referendum, they would look elitist, like they didn't care about the rest of the township.
But I mean, we've just gone through 6 to 7 months of COVID. People have lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, and they have no way to pay their mortgages, let alone pay their real estate taxes. And if we're gonna get hit with another tax on a real estate bill, I just find it very disheartening to the residents here, because of how are they gonna afford this? This is what I wanna know. Right now, $100 or $50 or even $250 is a lot of a burden to put on the residents of this village. And I also believe that, if we're gonna move forward with that, the businesses have suffered. We've all suffered here. So, I mean, to go ahead and now to have a 1% sales tax to the businesses.
Rose, where for 1% sales?
Well, I saw that on here where it said, it could possibly be a 1% sales tax increase.
Well, that's something that would be way down the line, because we don't want to tax them on that.
Well, and if I got that impression, then I'm sure that a lot of other people have got that impression as well. And, I just think if there is a way to do this, if there is a way to do a referendum, I would say let's do a referendum and let the residents make the decision, because we're the ones that are gonna be taxed. That's all I have to say.
Go ahead and see if you can answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the slide that you're referencing, I was explaining that there are a variety of different revenue streams that are available to villages compared to township government. That didn't mean, and so I was just giving you an example of those. No way was I implying that we were going to increase motor fuel tax or increase sales tax. I was just showing you that we have a lot of different variety of resources available that township government doesn't have available in terms of funding the public works.
Yeah, I understand it, but what if at the end of the day, there's not enough money in the budget to cover everything? Then it's gonna fall on the businesses and the residents. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Rose. Mayor Spray?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us out here today. Gary, great presentation. You know, I came here, of course, to advocate for the citizens of Lockport that live in Homer Township. You know, just listening to the presentation and hearing the comments from the board and the mayor, I mean, it's clear that you guys understand. It has been a tax on our residents that is for Homer roads, and everyone understands the inequity of it. And I think, you know, as we said at the township meeting last night, just looking at the compensation, you know, for assets that those citizens have paid for, and also, you know, a proper levy for only 18 miles of roads is what we're looking at. I get it. Everyone here seems to get it, and I appreciate it. I just, at this moment, want to just commend you on doing yeoman's work. This is not an easy thing that you guys are doing, because, as you know, residents will be like, you're about to raise their taxes, and those are the people you work for directly, and that's hard. So I commend you for doing a very difficult job, and it's the right job to do. And, you know, you're right, Mike, it's like, you know, Rose, I know it's like, well, we need a referendum, but that would be the classic, you know, taxation without representation. That would mean if it were only in the village of Homer that a referendum was done, then the citizens of Lockport who were paying that same tax wouldn't have a voice, and that's what we had a revolution over, right? Taxation without representation. So that doesn't work, and so you guys are doing the hard work, and I just want to say I appreciate it. The citizens appreciate it, and I know that that's you know, Mike and I have been having this conversation for a long time, trying to figure out how do we get to this point, and it's good that we're here. So thank you. I know that we'll continue to have good conversations, and whether this can be ironed out by the end of the year, you know, that's to be seen. I know the referendum's kind of thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into things. I'm not here to advocate for it one way or another, but I do thank you for your understanding of the problem and willingness to fix it. So, very good.
Thank you, Mayor. Next will be Mike Oscar.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Technology is wonderful. Let me shut these things off because get a lot of feedback to hearing it. You know, this first time in many years I've been on the other side of the desk. Township trustee for 4 years and 8 years on this board. So, Ruben, I could sympathize with you when you say it's a difficult decision. I think all decisions I'm sorry. I think all decisions are difficult. Some are just a little bit more than others. I can take that off. Thank you. Just a clarification for myself, so I understand this. On the one slide that was talked about earlier, those 4 funding mechanisms we already have in place. We do have the motor fuel tax, 1% sales tax, the rebuild bond, and our state-based population tax. So these are just additional funds that we can draw from to offset costs. It's not that we're going to put it into place, it's already there. But these are funds that we have, the township doesn't have. I think my one comment or question I have, and I hope somebody can answer this tonight, Mike, you and I go back 15 years when I first got on the board and you got on. And there was some unofficial discussion about what happens to Homer, to the highway districts when you get under a certain mile of roads. We have 18 in Homer Township. I believe the magic number is 14.99 roads. Am I wrong?
Right.
So, and tell me if I'm doing this wrong, stop me and you can finish the explanation. So if 3.1 miles of unincorporated township road gets annexed by anybody,
It evaporates.
it automatically, the highway department is gone. And I believe, unless they change legislation, it goes back to Will County,
Correct.
including all the equipment.
Well, from what I understand, that's new. That 15 mile is only a year or two old.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was the 4.99 now.
Okay.
So that 15, most people are still thinking that it's 5 miles. We're only 3 miles away from losing the road district.
Right, so if 3 miles of road or property in Homer, unincorporated Homer Township gets annexed, those roads get into a municipality, the highway department is gone, the equipment is gone. If we want that back, we have to buy it back. We already bought it. So why should we let that happen? There has been discussion about this. Mike, I know you thought about it a lot of years, we go back quite a while. this seems like just the right time to do it. When you look at the percentages, the amount of roads we have the opportunity to do something now. In my opinion, is the right thing to do. And I would hate to come back here in a year or two from now and say, we should have, and we could have, and we didn't. I'll ask the board two things. Number one,
15 seconds remaining.
oh my goodness, if I did 3 more, I said 2 minutes and 59 seconds on the end of it all. Never give a microphone to an ex-elected official. I asked you, you talked about taking care of Homer Township roads. Please, we can't let them out. We all live in Homer Township, even though we're incorporated. They're important to us, they're everything to us. And also look at the funding and see whatever we can do to offset costs. I'm making some extra. Thank you.
I have one more letter that I'd like to read. This is from our previous mayor, James P. Daly. And from Mayor Daly, as a 2-term mayor of the village of Homer Glen, I fully understand the importance of a public works department for the residents of Homer Glen. It will provide the independence and security the village needs to maintain the infrastructure into the future. The current intergovernmental agreement between the village and the township grants Homer Township complete control of the maintenance of our roads and drainage systems. This control includes tax levies, budgets, employees, equipment, maintenance programs, snow plow procedures, and much more. The goal of the asset transfer plan now being proposed by the Highway Commissioner and the village is to create a public works department for Homer Glen and break away from the township and end the control forever. That is why I fully support this plan. The township has recently placed a referendum on the November 3rd ballot that, if successful, will allow the township board to extend that control over a village by a township board vote. If you're asking, will it happen? Then consider this. At the last town board meeting, they voted to sue the village and the road district. Therefore, they are suing their own residents, and that's why I'm asking you not to vote no. And a referendum to abolish the road district. A no vote on this referendum will keep the decisions regarding the asset transfer program out of the hands of the town board and ensure that this public works program will be successful. It's time that the village moves forward with this plan and becomes completely independent from the township. Independence and self-control are the reasons that we incorporated 20 years ago. Signed, James P. Daly. Carrie, what else do we have?
I don't think we have, we have some online.
Yeah, one question.
One of the questions from Zoom was, will the head of the Homer Glen Public Works Department be appointed or elected? Can I answer that question?
Yes.
So we will hire a public works director, and it will be a professional position, and it will be an employee position, not an elected position.
And it's going to be run by this board.
Yes.
So instead of one person being able to decide what is going to happen when it's sentenced, we will have a board that sits behind it just to make sure that everything is running just as well as it was when we took over.
Another question was, why aren't Lockport, New Lenox, and Lamont no longer paying into the levy, and we will still be taking care of the roads and other services? So I think that might be some confusion. You're not taking care of the roads. You never have taken care of the roads, but yet they're still paying into your road program, your road district.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so, and then this one here, where would the cost of the roads come from? I think we answered that in the presentation. It's gonna come from, a new line item on the property tax bill, or a combination of a line item on property tax bill and supplemented by some of the other revenue sources that we currently receive from the village.
Mayor,
Can I just say one more, make one more comment? To raise the tax for the sake of raising the tax is just wrong, and I'm a conservative, but I've never been in favor of taxing for any reason. However, there's value in a tax, this is it. And there comes a time when taxes are necessary, when there's value. And the value is actually to the residents. And that's why I support this. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that too.
Anyone else?
I'd like to say something.
I just want to ask you guys a question. Are we going to be double taxed?
No,
This is going to offset what we pay into Homer Township Road, the highway department?
that'll go away, this will replace it. That's the goal.
So it's a wash.
It
I
should
think that's what everybody wants to hear.
That's, well, let me get into the weeds on this. He just asked if you're gonna be double taxed. In other words, are you still gonna be taxed by the village, Homer Township, and now a new tax by Homer Glen? And that's why I'd like to get into the weeds on this, just a bit. One of the things that we're discussing here is how we maintain the roads in, Homer Township, the unincorporated area. And there's 18 miles of those roads that have to be maintained. Homer Glen's proposal, on the Gallen one, is they will take care of all of the roads in the unincorporated area for all of perpetuity, free of charge. There's a few other scenarios that you can do this with, and I'll get into that. But the reason that's the scenario they're choosing is because if they do that, it completely eliminates the need for a township road tax, okay? Now, the village may choose, or either the township may choose, instead of just eliminating it, we want to keep a small Homer Township Road Department to take care of our own roads. If they keep a small Homer Township Road Department to take care of their roads, they also keep a small levy, okay? And that levy, the numbers I've looked at it, and believe me, I'm not trying to be misleading here. It's difficult to talk about taxes on a residence when everybody's house is so different. Right now, to give you an idea, the average person is paying somewhere close to $300 as a levy to the road district because of the size of taking care of 140 miles of road. If you go down to 18 miles of road, you won't need nearly as much. That tax levy should go down to about $35. That's how I've seen it, okay, per home. And it shouldn't even be that high. You have to look at the situation here. If you remember that map, the little tan area, do they have it? And pull that map. And again, I'm getting into the weeds on this, and I apologize, it gets complex. Okay, can you, is that a bigger picture of that? You guys see that map? Okay.
It'll come. All right, there we go.
Okay. So if you see the beige area in the center, that's the unincorporated area. So you'll be taxing to maintain the roads there. Unfortunately, you'll be taxing the entire map. That would be your tax base. And half of that tax that you're taxing is giving away. So you're giving away half the tax. So you have to tax double what you need. So in other words, if you needed, say, $250,000 to maintain those 50 miles of road, your levy would be $500,000. And then all of the communities around there would get half, and you get half. So there is a way to completely eliminate that one line item. And that's the way that the village is pursuing, where they would like to get into an IGA and take care of all the roads, free of charge in perpetuity, knowing that sooner or later they're all going to become part of some village anyway. So that's how they look at it. That would be the best way for like the citizens of Lockport and completely eliminate the tax. But
that for one thing is fair to the residents of Homer Glen.
Well, you know.
What you guys did in the past, that was something, it sounds like the swamp. They pay tax to the resident and you kick money back to the city.
We don't kick money back to the city.
And what else would you call
The tax collector splits it on the tax bill. He does that. Okay? This is state statute that determines who gets the money. The tax has been unfair, and I've been trying to fix it ever since. But this is the best, I've never come up with a better way to fix the tax, considering all the residents, all the stakeholders in the community, than the one we're pursuing here.
Mike, if I can address the
Go ahead.
question, just real, very briefly. Under the village's proposal that we're talking about, and we want, and I'm glad you spoke, because we wanted the input, we want to hear your thoughts and your comments, but under our proposal, you would not be double taxed. I guess in terms of answering your question, that's a simple question. Under this proposal, you would not be double taxed. What the township decides and how things go with there, that could interfere with that. But under this proposal, you would not be.
But why are we giving services away for nothing? Why would we even recommend it?
To avoid the tax. Because if you didn't give services away for nothing, you'd be taxed for it anyway. I mean, you'd still be taxed for it.
Because you as a Homer Glen resident would still be paying for it. You'd still be paying taxes.
Well, why
To the road
would
district.
New Atlantis and Lamont, they just get a service for free now? That's what I'm hearing.
They don't get any services on the road.
All right, let me make sure that I want to make sure we're absolutely clear, because those are great questions, and it is confusing sometimes when you're looking at it. Right now, Lamont, Lockport, and New Atlantis, as you said, in terms of getting free services, no, what they're doing is, they're paying half of that tax, the road tax, half of that goes to White, goes to the road district. However, their own city is maintaining those roads. So they're being taxed for stuff that they're not getting. That's what's going on there. And so what we're talking about is this unincorporated area, those 18 miles. The 18 miles that would be left over, that would be, everyone would be taxed for that, but the road district is only maintaining those 18 miles. We don't want that either. What we want is to be able to say, the Village of Homer Glen is going to take over maintenance and operations for those 18 miles. So that way, no one in the township, unincorporated, Homer Glen, New Atlantis, nobody is taxed by the road district. That tax is going to go away under our proposal.
Right, but don't you believe that they should be paying to Homer Glen's road highway department then at that point?
They can't, because even though it's only 18 miles, there would be a road tax that's applied to the entire township, not just the unincorporated. That's the way that the law is set up, and we have no control over that. But I understand where you're coming
Well,
from.
the municipalities are actually doing the work. Why not wipe out Homer Township's highway department completely? Get rid of it.
Because you'd still be taxed for it.
Why would we be taxed for it?
No, that is our
That's
proposal.
our-
When everything is said and done, there will be no road district. It would be gone. It would be eliminated. The assets would be transferred to the village. We would own them, the collective taxpayers and property owners. And then the other communities who have been paid into it for all these years would be compensated for their investment in that, and then they'd be gone too. And so then we would have what Lockport has and what New Lenox has today, which is their own public works department.
To me, they already been compensated in the past when you kick back the money to the towns.
Yeah, but
Some of it, but not all.
Cities, whatever. That should have been taken up years ago.
I kicked back $713,000.
Yeah.
They paid in $6 million.
You know? They should have stopped that.
I'd like to add one point before you come, Mr. Nancy, at one point. We talked about how all of these other municipalities are shareholders and owners, and how we would try to negotiate to fairly compensate them, specifically Lockport and the land share of Homer Glen being nearly 30% ownership. And we would compensate them for their ownership statement. The unincorporated sections, while they are a small portion, they still have an ownership stake also. And our offer to take care of those 18 miles of unincorporated roads in perpetuity only until they annex into another municipality. But that has a twofold effect. One is it helps to bring about the greater fruition our goal of getting rid of the Homer Township Road District tax on our bill. It also helps to compensate them for their ownership statement, just like we are doing with those other municipalities.
keep in mind, those unincorporated residents are a group that does not necessarily have a municipal voice in this conversation. They speak through the road, or through the township. That's the one who represents them. That's why we would, as a village, get into an intergovernmental agreement with the township to take care of those roads. It's basically a reverse of where we're at right now. We have an intergovernmental agreement with the township to take care of our roads. We would reverse that. We would be the provider. They would be inclined to us to take care. Homer Township will still be in charge of those 18 miles of roads. We will just offer them service because we'll be able to provide it. And this way it also buys their equity out, as we are trying to do with the other communities. So,
Well, what I thought I heard was that those communities were taking care of their own roads, and Homer Township did not do it.
that's correct.
So,
That is correct. In municipalities, that is correct. Lockport, and incorporated Lockport, incorporated Lennox, and incorporated Homer Glen, those roads, the taxes that come in have to, especially in Lockport and Lennox, where there's more road miles, their public works are taking care of them. But because of the way the state statute is written, the Homer Township Road District can only levy a tax on every taxpayer in the township. So they have to spread that blanket out over everybody. And we will not be able to do that. Homer Glen, we have no authority at this board to tax somebody who's outside of our corporate jurisdiction.
Yeah, the only way we would be able to do it is if they incorporated it here.
And I think that the 18 miles will shrink over time.
Yeah.
Because those are unincorporated miles, so either they're eventually will annex into Homer, or they're going to annex into Lockport or another community. So that 18 miles will eventually keep going down and down and down as well.
maybe. But on that note, if you guys want.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question.
Can you come to the podium? Can you come to the
You want to come up to the podium?
I have a quick question. One thing we can't forget about, the presentation was fantastic. It answered a lot of questions.
We have people on the computer listening. Thank you.
Still on?
Just pretend like you're singing.
The presentation answered a lot of questions, but one thing I didn't see that it answered was people. You can't forget about people, and maybe it has been covered, but it wasn't in the presentation, is if we acquire the road district, what happens to the employees that are on the Homer Township side? Are they going to come and work for the village now?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be laid off? Because I would hate to see anybody be laid off or lose a job because of that.
Although this entire thing is still in the concept stage, okay? We haven't signed any deals, we haven't drawn up any documents, we haven't set any dates or amounts. But when I started this negotiation with the village, I had exactly one deal breaker, and that's it. Every employee goes with. The employees are every bit as important to this village as the equipment in the land.
And how many employees?
Well, we have
at this moment?
about 20. And, 1, 2, 3 of those are part-time.
The next question briefly, we've talked about how when we acquired the township roads, and we're now taking care of them, it takes in the land and it takes in the roads. But I didn't see anything, maybe this is a question for the lawyer, does it guarantee us the equipment in the buildings, or does it only cover the roads?
It would be the properties, the real estate, the buildings, as well as the equipment, tools, and those kind of things.
Okay, and that separation, there shouldn't be any problem with the separation at that point where the township and the village is saying, well, we paid for this, but you didn't pay for it. I mean, you're not gonna have a point where you're gonna be splitting hairs for those items, right?
Yeah, so our goal is to make sure that we're getting the appraisals done right now for the value of the assets. That includes the real estate, buildings, and equipment. The roads are already owned by the village, so we don't have to buy those, because those are ours. They're just Mike's taking care of that for us. So when we go to actually finish the transfer of those assets, those will be held in the name of the village of Homer Glen. And so we will, but before we do that, we have to make sure that we've reached agreement with Lockport, we've reached agreement with New Lenox, we've reached agreement with about the 18 miles of unincorporated. Because they all have, even though we are the largest shareholder or investor, they all own, as Trustee Gray said, they all own a share. So we have to make sure we have all that tied up. Because if we don't have all those tied up, then that's where we end up in litigation. We don't want to do that. We don't want to spend money on attorneys, no offense, Eric. But we want to make sure that everyone's taken care of. And we have to make sure all the vested owners are taken care of.
Speaking of litigation, the litigation that we're going to be up against now with the township, how will that be paid for by the village? And will that be included in part of the cost of absorbing?
Which is going to be, obviously the cost is going to be borne by the village, and as you pay for other legal fees as it is. I guess we're going to have to wait and see what it involves, because we don't know what sort of litigation is going to be there, or it's going to involve, what they're going to be alleged. So,
Is there an estimate for that cost, just looking from what you know from past?
I really have no idea. We haven't even seen a complaint yet. Sorry, I have no idea.
That's fair.
But I would like to just go on the record to say that, and that, not speaking, I guess speaking on behalf of the entire board, is our goal is to avoid litigation, and always has been. No one wins when we end up in court. It drags out the process, and we have to do precious revenues that we could be putting towards this, right? So our goal will continue to be to work with all the impacted parties to try to avoid litigation if possible.
Yeah, I think overall, everybody sees this, the board, at least, I think the public, everybody was talking about this, it's a win-win-win for everyone. But
Except for the hurdles of litigation and the other unknowns.
No, I mean in terms of taking the litigation side, what we're proposing is a win-win-win for everyone. And I think that the concern is, the township doesn't see it that way, so we don't know what.
Just one, thank you. One last question, Mike DeVivo had talked about annexing, and all it was gonna take was what, 3.5 or 4 miles of annexing. Has the village looked at, do we have that opportunity just to annex and go that route as a village?
You mean for the 18 miles?
Yeah. What'd you say, Mike, 3.5 or 4
Well,
miles?
what happens if,
But we'll lose the assets.
from what I understand is if 3.1 miles gets annexed into something, the highway department goes back to county. It doesn't come to us.
Okay.
Then we have to bid on all of our equipment back to us. That's why I understand it. I just want to think, if I'm wrong, please someone tell me.
Changing, with the war on townships for the last few years, it's changing every month.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome. Is there anything else that before we close this up? If anyone has not understood or has a question about anything, please write it down or please call us. We will get you the answers. We are going to do this again next Monday, so this way everyone that wants to come out, that didn't come out tonight, can get their questions answered too. The questions that were put in tonight, if the ones we did not answer within 24 hours, we will have them on. We'll have them answered for you. So, that's it. Meeting's adjourned.